Hello and welcome back to the channel where today we are talking all about 1169 that goes down on November 8th, Friday night. Could be Saturday morning, depending on where you are in the world, from Lumpinee Stadium in Bangkok, Thailand. This was, of course, the card that was supposed to go down at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta for one's second US show of the year. It was moved to Lumpinee Stadium in Bangkok. We did already do kind of a reaction to that news when that came out, so you can go check that out if you want to find out a little bit more about that. But that is not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about the big fights that are going to be going down on this card. It is one of the biggest and best cards of the year for one championship. I think in terms of quality from top to bottom, it matches up with any card probably that one have put together, maybe aside from like 1X or something like that. It is a very, very good card in my opinion. And yeah, I would say the best of the year probably. Maybe the title fights aren't as good as some other title fights we've had this year, but I think, like I said, quality of the card as a whole is what we are talking about here. If you've been checking out my videos on this channel over the last week or so, you will know that I'm still kind of recovering from a pretty significant operation that I had done to my mouth. So I might sound a little bit off. I can't open my mouth really as much as I normally would, which is hard to overcome when you talk a lot, which is what I tend to do. So it's definitely a lot better than yesterday's episode of The One Report, where, if you don't know, The One Report, every Monday, we cover all of the big talking points from the previous week in one championship. There was a lot to get to on this last episode with huge fight announcements for one Friday fights and for one Fight Night 26. But anyway, we are here to talk about 1169 today. So let's get into that. Let me pull up the graphic here before we dive into these fights. Overall thoughts on the card before we go matchup by matchup. Of course, we not only had the card moved to Lumpinee Stadium, but that meant that we had a couple of fights changed around as well. Christian Lee was meant to be on this card. He will now be headlining one Fight Night 26 in December. In his lightweight MMA title defense against Ali Razulov. We were supposed to have Tawanchai versus Joe Nato at 3 in Atlanta. That will no longer be happening. We instead are getting Tawanchai versus Superbomb 2 at 1170 in January, which I think is a very, very exciting fight nonetheless, even if I was excited to see Joe Nato challenge for that belt once again. Yeah, I think this card is very, very good. I think that the title fights are at least entertaining, at the very least, I mean. And yeah, the rest of this card I think is fantastic. Should we leave it on this graphic or shall we switch over to the website? Let's have a look. What do we think? Do we go through here? Go fight by fight like this? I think we'll use the graphic instead. It's less bright. Let's do that. Present. Here we go. All right. And I don't have to move things around, so that's helpful too. Kicking off the card, we've got a strawweight Muay Thai contest between Alif and Walter Gonçalves. Gonçalves moving down a weight class here. After competing at flyweight during his time in one championship. He doesn't have the best record during his time in one, but he has fought some very, very tough opposition, including Rod Tang and Superlek. I believe he's won one fight in his 5 that he's had, and that win came right in the middle. So not the most impressive record, but maybe he will be able to find a run of form at strawweight. I think that coming in against an opponent like Alif is a very tough task indeed. Despite the fact that Gonçalves is the one moving down a weight class, I would expect there to be a fairly significant reach advantage for Alif, and I think that he will use that well. And I would probably pick Alif to get the win here. But Gonçalves has power in his hands, so you can never count him out. I think this is a really, really fun opener. If this was a regular fight night card and this was like bout number 7 or something, I'd be like, yeah, that's a fun one. So the fact we are kicking off the card with that is a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of watching Alif. Bout number 2, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to either competitor, but this is probably the fight I'm looking forward to the least on this card. It is a atomweight MMA contest between Ayaka Miura and Macarena Aragon, which is one of the most fun names to say in the history of this world. I love saying that name. It's fantastic, isn't it? Ayaka Miura, I just don't really know what this leads to. I'm glad that Ayaka was rebooked because she was supposed to fight. Which card was that now? Was it One Fight Night 25? I think it was One Fight Night 25, right? Was that ESL and Nicholas too? She was supposed to fight Jihin Rajuan, who didn't make weight or failed hydration or something like that. And so good to see her rebooked nonetheless. But not much to say about that one. And in the interest of not ruining my voice like I did yesterday, which really threw me off during that episode of the One Report. So apologies for the quality of that video. I was all over the place, but the show must go on. And the show will go on at 1169 into bout number 3, which is a featherweight Muay Thai contest between Eddie Abasolo and Mohammed Yunus Rabar. I think that this is one of the best fights on this card, in terms of not necessarily, the stakes, the matchup, the hype. But if you were going to ask me, which fights on this card do you think are guaranteed to deliver, this would be one of them. Eddie Abasolo is always in great fights. His last fight against Lisi is absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't seen that one from earlier this year, again, doesn't have the most impressive record during his time in one, but I think a bit of a dark horse to some degree because his record does not do his skill level justice. Mohammed Yunus Rabar, an incredibly aggressive opponent. Still kind of jury is out on him, I think, because we've only seen him fight twice in one. That was his 2 fights with Simapet. The first one, he missed weight, and then there was controversy regarding the stoppage in that first round. And then the second one, he got stopped early on by Simapet. So I'm interested to see how he looks going up a weight class. Bantamweight clearly wasn't the weight class for him. Interesting to see whether he's still going to be super aggressive and try and bully Eddie Abasolo like he did to Simapet. I don't know. I haven't seen anything of him other than those 2 fights. So I'm excited to see how this one goes. And we could get a new contender here because I think either of these guys are good enough to fight anyone in the division. At least from what I've seen from Yunus Rabar, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I guess with Eddie Abasolo, I've actually seen it. With Yunus Rabar, I'm kind of hoping that is what we see. But we will find out at Lumpinee Stadium. Bout number 4, heavyweight MMA, Marcus Buchecha Almeida taking on Amir AlBari here. Winner probably gets a title shot. I mean, Buchecha is coming off of a loss to Rugrug, who is in the main event. But I would imagine beating a guy like Amir AlBari, who's got 4 wins in a row at this point, is probably enough to get him in there for a shot against Malakin. I don't really see anyone else other than these 2 guys right now as the potential next opponent. You do have Ben Tynan in this division as well, who I think is definitely on his way, but he hasn't fought in what seems like forever. I know that he was originally booked for 1167, I think it was, or was it 1168 against Mauro Cirelli? So we'll see. I would like to see Ben Tynan back in there because I think he is probably on his way to a title shot. But yeah, you would imagine one of these 2 guys will get the next shot. It's a really interesting fight because Buchecha is a jiu-jitsu legend, I guess, is the only term that would be befitting of him. Did have that last, his first loss in MMA to Rugrug. Amir AlBari has won 4 in a row, including that very, very strange fight against Arjan Bula last time out. The question for me is what Buchecha does here, because this was always going to be a problem for him when he got towards the top of this division, is most of the guys come from grappling backgrounds, Amir AlBari, Rugrug, Malakin. And if he can't take them down and use his jiu-jitsu skills, then his striking is getting better, but it's probably not going to be as good as some of these guys. That being said, Amir AlBari isn't the most refined striker either, although I would say his striking has got a lot better since he joined One Championship. Yeah, interesting one. I think Amir AlBari is going to cause him some problems here, and I don't think it's going to be the most exciting fight. You never know. You could get, Buchecha versus Rugrug was fantastic. So, but I think it might get a little bit sloppy here. And I just don't know if Buchecha can make the improvements he needs to make in order to beat Amir AlBari striking, but I will be interested nonetheless. Strawweight kickboxing is up next between a legend of the game, Sam A, taking on Zhang Peimian. Sam A coming off of a phenomenal performance last time out over a guy whose name I constantly forget. Was it Akram Hamidi? It might have been. Where he face planted him at Friday Fights. That was unbelievable. Sam A looks like he is back on his hair. And Zhang Peimian is one of my favorite strikers to watch in One Championship. Fighting Rooster. I love this guy. So this is an unbelievable matchup. This could headline a card, I think. It's that good. So yeah, stoked for this one. Bout number 6, lightweight MMA. You've got the one lightweight submission grappling world champion, Cade Ruotolo, taking on Ahmed Mushtaba in his second MMA fight. Cade submitted Blake Cooper at 1167 for a debut win, and now builds into a fight with Ahmed Mushtaba. Again, if you watch the One Report weekly, you will know my thoughts on this matchup already. I think it's a good next step for Cade. Ahmed Mushtaba has fought some tough opposition during his time in One Championship, the likes of Sage Northcutt and Halil Amir, who I rate very, very highly indeed. I think this is this is a decent step up for Cade. It's a fairly tougher test, I would say, than Blake Cooper. I would expect Cade to come through it still, but I do think there is a little bit of a risk with this one, honestly. I'm surprised Cade is fighting opposition like Ahmed Mushtaba, who is an experienced guy, quite this early. But of course, everyone knows how good Cade is on the ground, right? He won CJI and ADCC already at like, was he like 22 years old, 23 or something? So absolutely remarkable. And I'm really, really excited to see what he can do in MMA. So I'm going to tune in and watch him every single time he is competing. Battle number 7, flyweight Muay Thai. I said flyweight then. Flyweight Muay Thai between Kong Torani and Tagir Kalalov. This fight was rebooked from One Fight Night 25. I was very glad to see it rebooked again. Gave my thoughts on this matchup already on the One Report. Yeah, good fight. Glad it was rebooked. Excited to see this one, and I'm sure it will deliver a fun fight. Adriano Moraes is back in bout number 8 as he takes on Danny Kingad. This is a rematch they fought like 7 years ago now, where Adriano submitted him in the first round. I would expect Adriano to come through here, but Danny Kingad seems to be in a really good place right now. And we haven't seen Adriano. I mean, we haven't seen Danny Kingad in a while, but we haven't seen Adriano since One Fight Night 10. That was May last year, where he completed his trilogy with Demetrius Johnson. He did lose that fight. So he's coming off of back-to-back losses, but they are to Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, who of course has since retired and vacated the belt, meaning that the winner here could put themselves into a position for a vacant title fight. I would say off the top of my head that Adriano Moraes, based on the last time that we saw him, is still probably the best flyweight in this division, now that DJ is no longer a part of it, but we will find out bout number 8 of 1169 whether that is still the case. First of 3 title fights is for the inaugural strawweight kickboxing world championship. It is Jackie Buntan fighting Anissa Mexon. This title fight is maybe the most interesting of the 3 title fights, I would say. I'm going to have a sip of tea right now, if you were wondering. That's not too hot. Lovely. Jackie Buntan, of course, a Muay Thai specialist who's going to be crossing over into kickboxing for the first time. I did interview Jackie Buntan over on Violent Money TV. Search that on YouTube. You can check out my interview with Jackie, where we talked about this fight and several other topics, I suppose. Anissa Mexon, very, very accomplished striker. Hasn't had the best run in One Championship, but she's fought, nothing but tough opposition. She did get, started her one career with a couple of wins, but then, you come up against Petjija. Good luck with that, right? Yeah, inaugural kickboxing world championship. I think this is a fascinating fight because Anissa has so much more experience than Jackie in kickboxing. Jackie, the younger, fresher, more powerful striker. So we will see how she gets on here. And I think this is a really, really interesting fight that could end up being a bit of a low-key banger. Co-main event, we've got Rodtang versus Jacob Smith. The Iron Man is back in action, defending his one flyweight Muay Thai World Championship in a rematch with Smith. They first met about 2.5 years ago now. Smith, on his One Championship debut, went 3 rounds with Rodtang, despite getting beaten up for most of those 3 rounds, was able to come through it through toughness alone, but now really feels like he is in the right position to beat Rodtang in a rematch at Lumpinee Stadium. I did speak to Jacob Smith in an interview, again, Violent Money TV, search that on YouTube. You can check out my interview with Jacob, where, he explains why he's confident. He explains that he thinks he's going to get the best version of Rodtang, because he believes that Rodtang respects him more than Rodtang respects some other opponents that he has fought a little bit recklessly against. I think there were moments in his fight with Dennis Puric that were like, okay, we've forgotten how good Rodtang is, and if you want to try and take the fight to Rodtang, good luck with that, because he will bring it to you. At the same time, there were moments in that fight that were very chaotic. Jacob Smith is not that kind of guy. He is not that kind of fighter. If Rodtang comes at him that aggressively, could Jacob Smith win? Yeah, I think so. If Rodtang is off of his game and is reckless, but as Jacob Smith said himself, will he get that version of Rodtang? I would say probably not. I think he will get a very good version of Rodtang purely because Rodtang is working his way towards. I nearly knocked over my tea there. That's why I panicked for a second. Rodtang is working towards this fight with Takeru, which he will not want to lose. And so I think that you are going to get a fired up Rodtang for this fight and for the Takeru fight. And I think that putting his best foot forward here will set him up perfectly for the Takeru fight. So I do expect Rodtang to be fired up and dialed in for this one, and that is going to make it a tough night for Jacob Smith, who I do think will put up a better effort than he did the first time around. Whether he will be able to leave with the flyweight gold and pull off a huge upset over the champ, we will find out soon. People were pretty critical of this matchup because Rodtang beat Jacob pretty decisively the first time around. Jacob is also coming off of a loss to Dennis Puric, the last man that Rodtang beat. But Jacob was pretty outspoken about the fact that he won that fight against Dennis, in his opinion. And I think a fair few people agreed with him. Some of the complaints that he had about the scoring of that fight and the refereeing too. So I don't hate it. I think it's a fun fight, and I think that it makes sense to do whilst you build towards Rodtang and Takeru. Takeru obviously fought about a month ago now, so Rodtang was going to either have to wait or stay busy, and I would rather he stayed busy than just wait for Takeru. Main event time, and it is the heavyweight MMA World Championship. The undefeated triple champ Anatoly Malikin returns to take on Umar R Kan. I always say Kane, but I believe it's Khan. I'll probably flip flop between the two if I'm being honest, because I'm not sure which one it is, and I'm so used to saying Kane at this point. Sip of tea before we talk about the main event. Malikin has been on a phenomenal run, as I'm sure you all know, going up and down weight classes, winning world championships, beating Kirill Grashenko, beating Arjan Bula, beating Renier de Reda twice, and now we get to see him fight a new opponent in Umar R Kan, who is a exciting fight, I would say, because he is a physical specimen like Malikin. He is a huge human being that has a lot of power and a wrestling background. So you would imagine both of their grappling backgrounds will cancel each other out, which will mean you have the speed and I would say more precise striking of Anatoly Malikin versus the sheer power of Rugrug. Unless you want to put a lot of stock into his recent kickboxing win over Bocha Ketchup, where he looked like a world champion kickboxer, of course. I personally do not put too much stock into that win that I'm convinced was some kind of pro wrestling work. Not necessarily on one's behalf, but on Butcher Ketchup's behalf. That is a story for another day. If you have not seen that fight, maybe search it and you can have your own opinions on that one. But yeah, power and explosiveness of Rugrug. We saw against, in his fight with Buchecha that he was able to fight at a reasonable pace. He did get tired, of course. He is a huge human being and he was throwing bombs in that first round. But the fight by the third round did kind of suck. We do know that, the first two rounds were wicked, though. We do know that Malikin is able to continue that pace consistently. And I just think that will be the difference, honestly. His pressure, I think he's, he isn't a striker that is going to overload on a big, overhand and get caught with a counter from Rugrug. I think his footwork is good enough to stay away from that power. And I do expect him to come through this one purely just by wearing Rugrug down and, eventually finishing him maybe in like the third round or something like that. But we could also get a scenario where Rugrug, a bit like his fight against Buchecha, lands early and just throws the kitchen sink at Malikin. And then we are really going to find out what Anatoly Malikin is all about, because for how good he has been during this time in one championship, we haven't really seen him tested in quite some time. RDR was able to put up a better fight with him. RDR, funnily enough, debuts for the UFC this Saturday. he was able to put up a better fight with him earlier this year in their rematch, but even then, it kind of felt like a ticking time bomb, right? You were just waiting for Malakin to break him down, and he eventually did. So it could get really interesting. I think that this fight is, it's not like, oh my god, this fight is fantastic, but it should be a lot of fun whilst it lasts, I think. And so I am excited to watch it. It is a fun matchup that poses some interesting questions. I think you can say that for the majority of this card. If I was going to pick which fight am I most looking forward to on this card, well, that's actually tough. I might go Jackie Buntan and Anissa Mexon. I'm also really excited to see Adriano back. I love watching Cade Rutolo grapple and compete in MMA, so he would be up there too. It's hard to pick one, but and Malakin versus Rugrug is really fun. I think Rotang versus Jacob Smith will be a lot of fun. I just think that this whole card is really consistently good. There's good matchups and good fights. Like there's either really interesting stylistic matchups or fights you just know will deliver. Like I think Rotang versus Jacob Smith, for all the complaints, it will be a fun fight. And this card is fantastic. Like I said, the only fight that I'm not thrilled about is featuring Ayaka Miura, who is a very good competitor. And like I said, I'm glad to see her rebooked, and I'm glad to see her rebooked against a fighter that has such a fantastic name like Macarena Aragon. If I'm saying that wrong, I really do apologize. I am not trying to poke fun. I just think it's a phenomenal name. It's two of my favorite things. Macarena and the leader of the fellowship, Aragorn. I mean, I know that it's slightly different, but it's close enough, right? I'm rambling, so let's get out of here. I hope you enjoyed the fights. I hope you enjoyed this preview video. Thank you for putting up with my voice and stuff like that as it gets back to full strength. I'm sure I will see you all very, very soon. But until then, enjoy the fights and peace.